Hi guys, welcome back to my channel where the gnomes live. This is Sharon Oyella, and today we're going to be putting together a miniature book. Now, size and measuring is not important. I'm going to show you how to create a book size for whatever shelf that you want to stick it on. Now, this isn't the first time I've done a video for miniature books. I've done this one here and it's on YouTube, and this one is a little bit different because I created some pages and then I sewed them together and then I put them into book covers. So if you're interested in seeing that video, I'll put that link in the pinned comment below. In that video, you'll also see the flip through of my first journal I ever made, my first mini journal that is, and that was in 2017. It was so tiny it fit inside a matchbox. I actually sent it to a friend of mine, so I no longer have it in my possession, otherwise I'd show it today. But it was a beautiful little journal. So if you're interested in those two, you can look in the pinned comment below. In this video, we're going to be making plain journals and we're going to be gluing the pages in. For the book covers, I am using cereal cardboard. You can use cracker box cardboard. Any thin cardboard would work. Emery board, a fine tip felt pen or a pencil, embroidery thread or string, scissors, and an awl comes in handy. It's not necessary, but I found it very handy in this project. X-Acto blade and some binder clips. And the glue I'm using in this video is Elmer's regular white glue. We also need some sort of decorative paper, so I'm using scrapbooking paper for the inside, front, and back cover. I'll also be using this cutting mat throughout the video. Now, excuse my cutting mat, it's been with me for many years and it's full of paint and glue residue. I do wash it, but it's showing signs of extreme use. So is my ruler. Anyways, we need the cutting mat, a ruler, and some paper for your pages. Now, my paper has been stained with instant coffee, so I mix instant coffee with hot water and then I dip my paper into it and let it dry. You don't have to do it that way. I just like that aged look myself, but you can, of course, can use regular white paper. And I'm also using a very thin fabric for the book covers, so you're going to need some sort of fabric for this. I would suggest getting the thinnest fabric that you can find. This, what I'm using today, is actually a scarf that I found in a thrift store, and it's see-through. And I don't know what the actual fibers are called or what the material is called, but you just want something thin and easy to work with. To start the video off, I'm going to be dressing up this little box here, and the colors that I use to paint it are pewter gray and granite gray. And of course, you don't have to watch that part if you're not interested. It was just to hold my books in. So with that said, there are detailed timestamps in the pinned comment below, so you can move around the video as freely as you wish. Alright, so when I'm making miniature books, I just go by the size of book that I need for the shelf I'm sticking it on. So there's no preset size, I'm just going to create a size for the shelf that I'm making. So I'm using a box set my daughter gave me on Mother's Day. It had a little necklace inside, so I want to keep it as a keepsake. So I'm going to turn it into a little library box. And this is just your Elmer's regular white glue. I'm going to dress this box up with some scrapbooking paper. So I'm going to do the bottom and then I'll put the same scrapbooking paper around the sides. Once that was done, I created two shelves out of regular cardboard, and because of the open edge of the cardboard, it's not paintable, so I'm just going to put a newspaper around, wrap it around the edge so I can paint the shelf itself. I'm just cutting off the excess there. And now I'm going to stick a pin in here just to make it easier for drying. So I'm going to paint these dark gray. I'm going to paint both sides and I'll let that dry. Once they're dry, I'm going to do a dry brush of light gray. So I'm going to dip my brush in here and I'll get the majority of the paint off. So the point of this is to transfer the color over, but don't do a solid color. You want to let that base color show through and it gives a nice effect. Alright, so I'm going to glue the shelves in, and what I have on the table there is 4 pieces of cardboard. These were pre-measured, so I think they're an inch tall. That's the space I want between my boards, and this way I don't have to guess or have anything to eye up. It's already level, so I can place my other shelf in there. And because I'm using tacky glue, this is going to grab on a little bit faster than regular white glue like Elmer's. So I can remove these. I didn't have to remove them, but I removed them, and I'm going to stick the lid on, and I'll set something heavy on top so there's full contact between the shelves and the bottom of the box as they're drying. And of course, I painted the outside of the box the same color as the shelves. Now I'm going to make the book covers, and I'm using the cereal cardboard, and I just sand down any glossy parts. And I'm just measuring up here just to get a strip to start with, because I want to measure out the size of the book cover I need. So I'm just going to shrink this down here. So I have one small enough to fit inside my shelf so I can see how deep I need the book cover to be. I'm just going to trim this up a little bit more And once I have this trimmed down to the size that I want, then I'll use this piece as a template to make my other book covers. So of course you need 2 for each book plus a spine. And again, the spine size or width is totally adjustable. I'm doing a little bit more on the wider side for this video just so I can, it's a little bit easier to work with on film, and then you can see exactly what I'm doing. Before we continue, I'll just give you the measurements of my books, and again, these are totally adjustable. You don't have to do the same size. So mine are 2 centimeters wide, and they are 2¼ centimeters long. That's the front and back cover, and the spine is approximately 1 centimeter wide. And speaking of spine, in this video I do add embroidery thread to create ridges like in old antique books. You don't have to do that, okay? You can totally skip that part. You can make a square edge spine. You don't have to round it out or anything like I'm doing in this video. This is just a look that I wanted for my books. So I'm adding embroidery thread, and then I'm going to round out the spine. You can do your spine however you choose. And because I'm doing a set of 6, I'm going to line these up because I want to put the ridges on the spine. So I want them to be even. So I just line them up and I'll draw a line across all 6, and I'm putting 3 of these in. So again, I'm going to draw another line and then one more after this. And these lines are going to be where I glue the embroidery thread to. So now I'm just going to brush some glue over top. I'm going to use 2 strands of embroidery thread. Of course, you can use as many as you want or just use one. It doesn't really matter. I'm going to hold the one end with my finger. I'm going to brush glue right over top. Now, I did cut these as they were wet. You don't have to do it that way. Of course, you can wait till they're dry. Might be a little bit easier. This is my final set on this spine. Brushing glue over top, cutting off the excess. And then I'll take my awl and just make sure that things are sitting properly. And then I'm going to check with the previous one to make sure that they're lining up. Alright, so once those are dry, we're ready to glue everything to the fabric. Now, if you're using fabric that's see-through like mine, make sure you're gluing down the plain side of the cardboard. Otherwise, you'll see the painted side through the fabric. So plain side down. And you're going to notice I'm going to leave a little bit of a space between all 3 pieces. See a little bit of space there. So when I put my other one down, again, the same amount of space in between. And we do it that way, as you can see here, so the covers can bend, open and close smoothly. If you put it a little bit too close, then that cover becomes a little bit tight when you're closing it up. And then you want to make sure that the fabric is getting into the glue on either side of those ridges that we created with the embroidery threads. I'm going to use my awl to do that. Now I'm going to cut the excess fabric off, leaving about 1/4 inch. The corners get cut on an angle, but you don't want to cut right to the corner. You want to have a little bit of fabric there, as you can see in that freeze frame. I'm going to continue cutting around, cutting the corners on an angle. Alright, now we're ready to glue in the excess fabric here. So I'm just going to paint around the edges, and then I'll roll the fabric into the glue. And then I'll paint over the fabric with the glue. In the corner, I'm just going to make sure that there's no bulk there, so I'm just squishing it flat to the cardboard. And I'm going to leave this dry until the glue isn't sticking to my fingers. I don't want the glue to totally cure because I want to round out the spine. So don't leave it so long that this step becomes a little bit more difficult. I found as soon as the glue wasn't sticking to my fingers, then I rounded out the spine using the back end of a paintbrush or a pencil or anything that round you can shape that spine to. And just force it over that shape, and now you have a rounded spine. Now we're ready to make the book pages. So I'm going to line up the bottom of my paper with my cutting mat. There's a line there. I've lined it already. And I place my book cover over so there's a little bit of a space you can see at that cutting line and the edge of the book cover, because I don't want the pages to be exactly as wide as my book cover. I want them to be a little bit more narrow. And once I have this first piece cut, now I can use that one as a measuring tool for the next one. So I just have to line up the bottom here. I'm just going to make one mark with my fine tip felt pen here. You can use a pencil so you can erase it, but I couldn't find one. And then you're going to line that mark up with your cutting line. And the bottom of your paper goes along the line of the cutting mat. So everything is square. And now I just have to place my ruler over that cutting line and then cut that one. And you cut as many pages as you need, of course. And the number of pages is going to depend on how thick your paper is, of course, and how wide your spine is. So for this one here, I have thicker paper and the spine is 1 centimeter wide. I needed 55 pages to fill that book. Once I had all my strips cut, I need to know how long the page has to be. So I'm going to make a template page. And of course, you want to have some space around your paper. You can see the book cover around the paper. That's what you want to see. So when you close up your book, it's just like a regular book. You have some of that edging of the book cover around. So now I have my template piece. I can cut the rest of my pages. All right, so I'm going to line up 5 strips here, and I think any more than 5 it's difficult to get a straight cut line, so it just depends on how sharp your scissors are. I actually liked using 5 because I knew how many pages I had with every cut, so I would make little piles of 10, so when I got to 50 I knew I had pretty much one book done. And of course you're all going to find your own rhythm of doing this, right, and your own way of doing this. You might find something that works a little bit faster, but this worked out pretty good for me. So we're at 40 there, 2 more cuts to make, and then we can stop and we're going to bind up the book. So there we go, we got 50. So we got 50 pages there, and I'm just popping in with an edit to tell you to use your template piece to also cut 2 scrapbooking pieces. These are going to be used for the inside back and front cover. Cut them a little bit on the larger side though, so we can trim them down as needed when we get to this step. So I'm going to line these pages that I just cut, making sure that I tap them down on the table so I have one flat edge with those pages, and then I'm going to hold it together with a binder clip, and then that straight edge I'm going to paint glue right over top, covering that entire surface, and then I'll let that dry. So that takes about 20 minutes or so to dry, and then once that's dry, remove the binder clip. Now we're just going to check it out here. Now my edges, I like to sand them down with an emery board. You don't have to do this step. I do have some pages that are a little bit longer than others. This kind of evens them out. It also roughs up the edges, kind of ages them. If you don't like that look, then you skip this step. And if you have any longer pages, you can just trim them up with your scissors. Okay, so once that step is done, now I'm going to cut a piece of fabric. This fabric here is going to be glued to the spine of the book, and I have about a ½ inch on each side of the spine. That's excess. Now I'm going to put glue on the spine again, and then I'll place the fabric into that glue. Make sure there's no glue on the pages on each side. And I'll place that right into the glue, and now I'm going to glue or paint glue over top that, just over the spine itself, and then I'll leave that dry. Once that's dry, we're ready to install them into the book covers. And now I'm going to paint glue on the inside front and back cover, and we're going to be gluing in the excess fabric, not the spine itself. We don't want to put any glue where I just pointed to, okay? The spine has to be free of glue. We're just gluing in the excess fabric. And if you have a book that you've written in, or pages that you've written in, you have top and bottom, just remember that you're gluing things in the right way and not upside down. That's easy enough to do. All right, so now we have to glue in our scrapbooking pages to tidy up the inside covers, front and back. So I did save mine for each book. I cut approximate size, and then I kind of trim them up as I'm putting each book together. Working with miniatures, everything's a little bit wonky, so this is how I like to do mine. All right, so let's glue these in. I'm going to use a paintbrush and spreading that glue across the surface from edge to edge. And of course, we don't want to be putting so much glue that it's oozing out anywhere. So you saw I just painted on a thin layer of glue. And once those are glued in, then we can set them aside to dry. I just put cardboard on each side of my covers so I don't get indents from my binder clip. If you're worried about glue oozing out, then take wax paper and put those in between the front and back cover before you close them up. Then place your cardboard over that, and then the binder clip, and now you can leave this dry. And that brings us to the end of another video. I hope you found it helpful. I really enjoyed actually gluing the pages together. I found that a lot more, not simple, but a little bit more quicker, I guess, than sewing them all together. But I like both methods. It's really just whatever you're into. Anyway, guys, there's going to be a couple more videos coming your way on miniature books. I just don't know when that's going to happen because I have other videos that I have to get up regarding the pumpkin house that I was working on in October. And I promised to show the doll that I just made in that pumpkin house. So we're going to get to that in the next video, and then there'll be more miniature books coming your way. All right, my friends, thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.